The stars of the Verine system glowed like silver dust scattered across a black sea. The alien ship Velora moved silently through that sea, its hull reflecting the light like polished glass. Inside, every corridor shimmered with soft blue light and quiet hums of energy. For the Elvorians, silence was comfort. They were a calm, wise species known for their discipline and logic. Their skin shimmered faintly in shades of blue or green, their eyes almost translucent, like they could see thoughts instead of faces. Among them stood Captain Sereth Valara, tall and elegant, her long silver hair braided neatly down her back. She was known for her strict composure and her ability to command with both grace and authority. Her people trusted her to represent them on their first peaceful contact with humans, a new and unpredictable species from a young, ambitious world called Earth. When the message came from the human colony on the nearby moon Adra 9, requesting cooperation on wildlife research, the Elvorians had agreed, and with caution. Humans were emotional, impulsive, and bold, yet their creativity and courage fascinated many across the galaxy. As the ship approached the colony, Sereth stood near the viewing window, watching the moon's surface. Its terrain was half covered in silver dust and half in lush green plains that stretched toward deep valleys. Her mind was calm, but inside she wondered what kind of beings humans really were. When the docking sequence began, a faint vibration passed through the ship. The connection was made. The airlock opened. A group of humans waited outside, dressed in simple uniforms. They looked different from the Elvorians. Warmer skin tones, shorter ears, smaller eyes that still seemed bright with energy. One of them stepped forward and smiled, extending his hand. "I'm Lieutenant Marcus Hale, Human Engineering Officer. Welcome aboard Hydra 9. Sereth blinked once, then slowly extended her own hand, copying his motion. Elvorians rarely touched in greetings, but she had studied human customs carefully. His grip was firm but not forceful. She found it strangely reassuring. "Captain Sereth Valara of the Velora," she said, her voice calm and musical. "It is an honor to meet you, Lieutenant." He smiled again. "The honor's ours, Captain." They began the tour. Sereth's team followed, scanning structures and equipment, while Marcus explained how the colony had been built in less than 2 years. He spoke with pride, not arrogance, and often paused to let Sereth observe or ask questions. Eventually, they reached the outer research fields, where massive fences surrounded a wide, grassy area. Inside the field were creatures unlike any Sereth had seen before. 6-legged beasts, tall as small houses, with thick scales on their backs and long, graceful necks. Their tails swept the grass like moving ropes of muscle. "These," Marcus said, resting his hand on a data panel, "are turvan beasts. They're native to Hydra 9, powerful but peaceful herbivores. We study their migration patterns." Sereth's eyes widened slightly. The creatures moved slowly, their massive legs pressing deep marks into the soil. They seemed ancient, as if born from the same strength as mountains. Her scientists began recording readings while she simply watched. Mesmerized by the balance of beauty and power, she turned her head slightly and caught Marcus standing a few meters away. His gaze locked in the same direction, his expression deep in thought. At first, she thought nothing of it, until his eyes shifted slightly toward her direction. For a moment she misunderstood. Her calm expression froze, her posture straightened, and a faint spark of irritation touched her chest. Was he staring at her? Among Elvorians, direct gazes without purpose were considered rude, even aggressive. Her people valued restraint, and such behavior could mean mockery or challenge. Her voice, though steady, carried a hint of coldness. "Is something the matter, Lieutenant?" Marcus blinked, startled out of his thoughts. "What?" "Oh, no, Captain, not at all." Her tone stayed calm, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then may I ask, what exactly caught your attention so deeply?" Marcus looked at her, confused, then followed her gaze toward the beasts. "Oh, that. I was just watching them. They're incredible, aren't they? The way they move, strong but peaceful. You can tell they know their place in the world. That kind of balance is rare." Sereth hesitated. His voice was genuine, filled with quiet admiration, not mockery. She turned her head toward the beasts again, studying his words carefully. He wasn't staring at her. He had been observing the creatures, with the same awe she had felt moments earlier. Still, something about his honesty caught her off guard. Most Elvorians would have hidden embarrassment behind logic or silence, but this human simply spoke his mind, open and unguarded. For a few moments neither spoke. The only sound was the wind moving through the grass. Finally, Sareth nodded slowly. "You find beauty in strength," she said softly. Marcus smiled a little. "I think we find beauty in anything that reminds us of life, power, peace, even struggle. It's part of what makes us human." Sareth turned her gaze toward him again. His tone carried no arrogance, only truth. It was refreshing. Elvorians valued honesty, but they rarely expressed emotion with it. Humans, she realized, made truth alive with feeling. As the tour ended, she walked beside him quietly, her mind turning over their brief exchange. She felt something unfamiliar, a small flicker of warmth beneath her calm surface. She ignored it, telling herself it was simple curiosity. That night, back aboard the Valora, Sareth stood before the observation window again, watching the human colony lights sparkle like stars below. Her aide, a younger officer named Loren, approached. "Captain," he said carefully, "how is the human colony?" Sareth kept her gaze on the lights. "Efficient. Their technology is crude, yet their creativity compensates. They adapt quickly," Loren nodded. "And the humans themselves?" She paused, her reflection flickering in the glass. "They are unpredictable. Dangerous?" She shook her head slightly. "No, not in the way we thought. They feel deeply, and yet somehow they are not ruled by it. That balance gives them a kind of strength we rarely understand." Lyron tilted his head. "Did something happen?" Sareth almost smiled, a faint, almost invisible curve of her lips. "A misunderstanding. But it taught me more about humans than any data report could." She turned away, the faintest blush of violet warmth appearing along her cheeks, a rare color for her species, one that signaled emotional surprise. She didn't even notice it until Loren blinked in surprise. "Captain, your skin tone." Sareth raised a hand quickly, regaining her composure. "It's the lighting," she said, returning to her usual calm. "Prepare tomorrow's joint briefing. We'll continue our cooperation with the human engineers." As Lyron left, she let her calm expression fade for just a moment. Her mind replayed Marcus's honest words, his simple smile, and the sincerity that seemed to radiate from him without effort. "Humans," she murmured to herself. "Strange creatures. They look at the world with wonder, even at things others fear." Outside, the beasts of Hydra 9 moved silently under the twin moons. And somewhere in the human base below, Marcus was likely looking at the same sky, wondering if the Elvorians saw the universe the same way he did. Sareth wasn't sure why the thought made her heart feel lighter, but it did. And for the first time in her life, the perfect calm of an Elvorian captain was just a little less still. The next morning began with the soft hum of systems running aboard the alien vessel Valora. The corridors glowed with blue light, and every Elvorian moved quietly, speaking in calm tones. Their society prized order and efficiency, but Captain Sareth Valora felt something she rarely did: distraction. Her mind kept drifting back to the human engineer, Lieutenant Marcus Hale, and the strange conversation they had shared near the field of giant beasts. He had spoken with such simple honesty. No fear of sounding foolish, no effort to hide his feelings. He had simply told her what he saw: strength, beauty, life. That sincerity had unsettled her composure in a way that logic couldn't explain. She stood in her cabin now, looking at her reflection. The faint color that had risen on her cheeks last night was gone, replaced by her usual calm blue tone. Yet her thoughts were still clouded. Why had his words lingered? Why did that moment replay in her mind as if it held some secret meaning? Her communicator chimed softly. "Captain," said the voice of her second officer, Lyron. "The humans have invited us to attend a joint research meeting in their central lab. Lieutenant Hale will be there." Sareth hesitated only for a heartbeat before answering. "Tell them we accept." The human lab was alive with energy. Screens flickered with moving images. Researchers moved between stations, and the hum of machines filled the air. Humans were not quiet like the Elvorians. They spoke freely, smiled often, and laughed without restraint. Sareth walked through the lab with measured steps, her long robe flowing behind her. Several humans turned to look, some out of respect, others out of simple curiosity. To them, the Elvorians looked almost like living art, tall, graceful, and glowing faintly under the lights. Marcus Hale stood near a large table, examining data projections of the Turvan beasts. When he saw her, his expression brightened. "Captain Sareth." "Glad you could join us." Sareth nodded politely. "Your invitation was appreciated." He motioned toward the display. "We're studying the beast's migration routes. They move in patterns that seem random, but there's a rhythm hidden in them, almost like a song of the land." Her head tilted slightly. "A song of the land?" Marcus smiled. "It's just an expression. Humans like to describe natural patterns as music. It helps us understand the world emotionally, not just mathematically." "Emotionally," she repeated, tasting the word as if it were new. "You mean through feeling?" "Exactly," he said. "Sometimes feeling teaches us more than numbers can." That idea caught her attention. Aelvorians trusted numbers, logic, data, never feelings. Yet this human was suggesting that emotion could lead to truth. Sareth leaned closer to the display, watching the colorful lines move like waves of light. "Our sensors measured slight magnetic variations during their migration," she said. "Perhaps they follow energy shifts." Marcus looked thoughtful. "Maybe. Or maybe they follow comfort, water, warmth, safety. Like we all do." Sareth turned to look at him, curious. "Are you suggesting these creatures move because of desire?" He chuckled softly. "Not desire, instinct, the need to belong somewhere safe. Every living thing seeks that." For a moment, silence stretched between them. His words were simple, yet they carried a quiet truth. Even she, calm and logical, could not deny that her people too sought the same. Safety, order, peace. But humans found beauty even in chaos. As the discussion continued, Sareth asked questions and Marcus answered with patience. He didn't treat her like a superior or a stranger, but as a fellow explorer. That too was strange to her. Most species treated Aelvorians with distant respect, sometimes even fear. Humans seemed to skip both and go straight to friendship. After the meeting, as the other scientists began to leave, Marcus approached her again. "Captain," he said with a friendly tone, "we're planning to visit the southern field tomorrow. It's where the young Turvans gather. Would you like to join us?" Sareth paused. "Why would my presence be useful?" "Because you see things differently," Marcus said simply. "And I think the beasts like calm people." That last sentence surprised her. She wasn't used to someone speaking to her like that, gently, almost teasingly, yet with respect. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. I will attend," Marcus smiled. "Great, I'll make sure everything's ready." As he walked away, Sareth's aide Liren, who had been quietly observing, leaned closer. "Captain, is it wise to spend time with them outside official meetings?" Sareth glanced at him. "Understanding begins where distance ends. Liren, if we wish to know humans, we must walk beside them, not above them." Liren nodded slowly, though his expression showed doubt. The next day dawned with soft golden light spilling across Idra 9's plains. The air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of wild grass. Marcus waited near a transport vehicle, checking the data scanners. When Sareth arrived, the morning light caught the silver strands of her hair, and for a moment, Marcus thought she looked like part of the sunrise itself. "Good morning, Captain," he greeted cheerfully. Sareth inclined her head. "Your world has pleasant light." "Yeah," he said, smiling. "It grows on you." They boarded the vehicle and began the short journey toward the southern field. The landscape rolled past, green hills, sparkling streams, and distant mountains. Sareth sat quietly, observing everything. Humans seemed to live in a world filled with sound and color, where even silence felt alive. When they reached the field, they found a herd of young Turvan beasts moving slowly across the grass. The creatures were smaller than the adults, but still massive, with bright eyes that reflected the sunlight. Marcus stepped forward carefully, holding a sensor device. The creatures turned their heads but didn't flee. He moved with calm, deliberate steps. Not fear, not aggression, just quiet respect. Sareth followed him, keeping a measured distance. Her robe brushed the grass, and a faint shimmer of blue light trailed her movements. "Do they always react so calmly to humans?" she asked softly. "Not always," Marcus replied, "but I think they can sense intention. If you mean no harm, they don't fear you." She watched as one of the beasts lowered its long neck, bringing its massive head closer to Marcus. Its eyes blinked slowly, curious. Marcus didn't move. He just stood there, letting the creature study him. Then gently he placed a hand on its thick hide. For a moment the air felt still. The alien beast, so huge and powerful, let a fragile human touch it without fear. Sareth felt a strange tightening in her chest. Not fear, not surprise, but something softer. Admiration, perhaps. Marcus turned toward her with a small grin. Would you like to try? Her eyes widened slightly. Touch it? Yeah, he said lightly. It won't hurt you, promise. Sareth hesitated, then slowly stepped forward. The creature's massive eye followed her, calm and patient. She extended her hand, fingers trembling just slightly. Until they brushed the beast's hide, it was warm, alive, breathing, real. In that simple touch, Sareth felt something shift inside her. Connection. Trust. A bridge between two worlds that had once seemed impossibly far apart. Marcus watched her quietly. See, not so bad. She turned her head toward him. It is extraordinary, she said softly. Your species trusts easily, he chuckled. Maybe. Or maybe we just hope for the best. Hope, she repeated. We study probabilities, not hope, he smiled. Then maybe that's why the galaxy needs both of us. Sareth didn't reply, but her expression softened. For the first time, she began to understand what made humans different, and why they were capable of reaching stars even older civilizations feared to approach. They stood together in silence, surrounded by the slow, steady breathing of the beasts. The sky above shimmered with two suns, their light weaving across the fields like threads of gold. As they returned to the vehicle, Sareth found herself speaking without planning to. Lieutenant Hale, she said quietly, when you look at these creatures, what do you feel? Marcus looked at the horizon, thoughtful. Peace, he said, and a little bit of awe. They remind me that life is bigger than us, but that doesn't make us small. It makes us part of something amazing. Sareth nodded slowly. She didn't fully understand his words, but she felt their truth. For the first time, she didn't analyze or calculate. She simply felt. That evening, back aboard Velora, Sareth recorded her daily report. Her voice was calm, but her words carried a new warmth. The humans continued to surprise me. Their emotions, though uncontrolled, seemed to guide them toward understanding rather than away from it. Perhaps emotion is not weakness. Perhaps it is another kind of strength, one we have forgotten. As the stars outside shimmered, Sareth allowed herself one small smile, rare, genuine, and entirely her own. Night fell gently over Idra 9, painting the alien sky in shades of silver and violet. The twin moons hung like glowing lanterns, their reflections dancing on the rivers below. The colony's lights flickered softly in the distance, surrounded by vast plains where the great turbaned beast slept peacefully. From her observation post aboard the Violora, Captain Sareth Velara watched the landscape through the large glass window. She had never stayed so long near a human colony before, but something about this place and these people felt different. Her thoughts drifted once again to Lieutenant Marcus Hale. She remembered the calm way he had approached the beasts, his gentle tone when he spoke to them, and his quiet confidence even among the unknown. Humans were emotional, yes, but that emotion seemed to give them courage. It was as if their hearts gave them the strength to act where others hesitated. For the first time, Sareth wondered if her people's constant calm had cost them something important, the will to take risks. Her communicator chimed, pulling her from thought. Captain, said Lyron's voice, slightly tense. We've received a weather alert from the human base. A magnetic storm is approaching from the eastern ridge. The humans are requesting cooperation to secure the outer wildlife zone. Sareth turned sharply. How severe is it? High intensity, Lyron replied. Electrical discharges, strong winds, and surface instability. The turban herds may panic. If that happens, the research field could be destroyed. Sareth didn't hesitate. Prepare a small response team. I will lead it myself. Lyron hesitated. Captain, the humans have already... That is an order, she said firmly. We will assist them. Within minutes, she was in her field suit, its silver plating glowing faintly as she boarded the small shuttle. As the engines ignited, she could already see flashes of lightning streaking across the planet's edge. The colony's alarm lights painted the area red when the Vilora's shuttle landed. The wind howled, carrying sand and static energy that shimmered in the air. Marcus was already there, shouting instructions to a group of engineers as they struggled to reinforce the perimeter fence. The beasts inside the field were restless, moving in nervous circles, their deep rumbles echoing like distant thunder. When Sareth stepped out of the shuttle, the humans turned in surprise. She moved through the storm with graceful precision, her calm presence a strange contrast to the chaos around her. "Lieutenant Hale," she called, her voice steady even as wind roared past them. Marcus turned, his face lit by the storm's electric glow. Despite the danger, he smiled faintly. "Captain! Didn't expect you out here in this mess." "Your colony requested support," she replied. "We will not stand by while life is threatened, human or otherwise." He nodded, his expression full of respect. "Glad to have you, Captain. We could use the help. The storm's stronger than expected, and the eastern fence just failed." Sareth's eyes moved to the horizon where bright arcs of energy flashed across the sky. "What of the creatures?" "They're spooked. If they break through, they could stampede toward the colony," Marcus said. "We're trying to calm them and reroute them toward higher ground." "Then we shall assist," Sareth said, signaling her team. "Stabilize the fence and project a low-frequency tone. It may soothe their nerves," Marcus blinked, impressed. "You can do that?" Her lips curved in a small, confident smile. "We study patterns, Lieutenant. Even fear has rhythm. Together, humans and Aelvorians worked side by side. Blue lights from alien devices mixed with the golden glow of human tools, creating a strange harmony amid the storm. But the wind grew stronger. Thunder rolled. One of the fences cracked and fell with a loud crash. The beast roared and began to move, heavy, frightened, unstoppable. "Fence line down," shouted one of the engineers. Marcus didn't wait. He grabbed his emergency gear and ran toward the breach. "Lieutenant," Sareth called sharply. "That area is unstable." He turned briefly, shouting over the storm. "If they run toward the colony, people could die. Someone's got to guide them away." Before she could stop him, he sprinted across the field, lightning flashing behind him. His figure looked small against the massive beasts, but his movements were firm, confident, and fearless. Sareth's mind raced. Logic told her to let him handle it. It was his world, his responsibility. But her instincts rebelled. Without another thought, she followed. Marcus ran straight toward the largest of the turbines, waving a bright signal torch. The creature stopped, its wide eyes locking onto the flickering light. The others slowed behind it, confused by the sudden flash and sound. "Come on," Marcus muttered, moving slowly backward, trying to lead them away from the colony's direction. "This way, big guy." "Easy now." A strong gust of wind slammed into him, throwing dust and debris into the air. He stumbled but didn't fall. The creature bellowed, restless and uncertain. Then Sareth appeared beside him, her energy shield flaring briefly against the storm. Her calm voice cut through the chaos like a song. "Follow the frequency, not the fear," she said softly, adjusting her device. A low hum filled the air, gentle, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. The turvan beasts lifted their heads, their movements slowing. Marcus stared at her in awe. "What are you doing?" "Using resonance," she said calmly. "We communicate through harmony." Within moments, the herd began to move, not wildly, but in an organized path toward the open plains. The thunder rolled overhead, but the panic was gone. Marcus laughed breathlessly. "You just talked a 10-ton creature out of a stampede." "That's amazing." Sareth looked at him, her expression softening. "And you ran into danger without hesitation." "That is also amazing." Before either could say more, a sudden crack split the air. A lightning strike hit the ground nearby. The force threw both of them backward. Marcus landed hard, and a metal beam from the fallen fence trapped his leg. "Marcus," Sareth shouted, rushing to him. He grimaced, trying to pull free. "I'm fine, just stuck." She knelt beside him, her eyes scanning the damaged beam. The metal glowed faintly with residual energy. She reached for it but pulled back as sparks danced across its surface. "It's charged," she said. "Touching it could be fatal." Marcus winced. "Then you'd better not." Sareth's voice grew firm. "I will not leave you." He looked up at her, surprised by the quiet strength in her tone. "Captain, you could be hurt." She ignored him, adjusting the settings on her wrist device. With careful precision, she directed a pulse of energy that neutralized the charge. Then with all her strength, she lifted the beam. It was heavy, but she didn't stop until his leg was free. Marcus pushed himself up, breathing hard. "You saved my life." Sareth's eyes met his. "We saved each other." The storm slowly began to fade. The winds calmed, the lightning moved toward the horizon, and the rain came gently, washing the dust from the air. Together they stood in silence, watching the turvan beasts settle once more on the distant hills. Later, as dawn broke over Hydra 9, the sky glowed pink and gold. The colony was safe, the creatures unharmed, and the joint effort between humans and Aelvorians had succeeded. Marcus sat on a small crate, his leg bandaged while Sareth stood nearby, speaking softly into her communicator. When she finished, she looked toward him. "You humans," she said quietly, "risk much for others." He smiled faintly. "It's what we do. We can't stand still when someone needs help, even if it's dangerous." Sareth considered his words. Her people had always believed emotion clouded reason. But here, in front of her, stood proof that emotion could create courage, the kind that saved lives. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "emotion is not weakness. Perhaps it is the strength that moves you forward." Marcus nodded. "Maybe it's both. You think we feel? Together, that's balance." For the first time since meeting him, Sareth laughed softly, a quiet, graceful sound that surprised even her. Marcus smiled. "That's the first time I've heard you laugh. Do not grow used to it," she said, but there was warmth in her voice. As they watched the sunrise, Sareth felt something new stir inside her, a quiet admiration for the strange, emotional humans who found beauty in danger and hope in every storm. In her next report, she would write, "Humans face chaos with open hearts. They do not wait for safety to act. They create safety through action. Logic guides us, but they remind us to live." And though she did not mention it, the thought of Marcus Hale's fearless smile stayed with her, brighter than any dawn. Morning sunlight spread slowly over the green plains of Hydra 9. The storm had passed, leaving the world calm and fresh. Drops of rain still clung to the tall grass, shining like tiny stars in the soft light. The great turvan beasts were grazing peacefully again, as if nothing had happened. Inside the human colony, people moved busily between buildings, repairing minor damages. Laughter and conversation filled the air, proof that life, like the humans themselves, always found a way to keep going. Captain Sareth Valara stood quietly near the landing pad of her ship Vylora. Her silver robe fluttered gently in the wind. Around her, her Aelvorian crew loaded equipment and samples for departure. The mission was officially over. The joint operation between humans and Aelvorians had been successful, but Sareth's thoughts were far from calm. In the days following the storm, something within her had changed. She still spoke with discipline and grace, but her silence no longer felt as heavy as before. Her mind kept returning to the same image. A human engineer standing fearlessly in front of danger, protecting both his people and the alien creatures they studied. She had seen courage before. She had seen sacrifice in battle reports and diplomatic crises, but this was different. Marcus Hale's bravery came not from command or training, it came from heart. It came from that strange human mixture of emotion and instinct that her people rarely understood, and she admired it more than she could admit. Her communicator beeped softly. "Captain," said her aide Lyron, "the crew is ready for departure. The humans have invited you for a brief farewell ceremony before we launch." Sareth took a slow breath. "I will attend," she said. The gathering took place in the open courtyard near the colony's central dome. A few dozen humans and Aelvorians stood together, two very different species sharing quiet smiles and polite words. When Sareth entered, conversation paused for a moment. The humans respected her presence not out of fear but out of genuine appreciation. She was no longer just the distant alien captain. She was someone who had stood with them during the storm. Marcus Hale was there too, leaning slightly on a metal cane because of his injured leg. When he saw her, his face brightened with a familiar, easy smile. "Captain Sareth," he greeted warmly. "Glad you could make it." "I would not leave without saying farewell," she replied, her tone formal but soft. He laughed lightly. "You sound like you're giving a speech." "Perhaps I am," she said, a faint curve of amusement on her lips. The ceremony began with a short speech from the colony's commander, thanking both crews for their cooperation. He spoke of shared goals, peace, and discovery. But Sareth's thoughts kept drifting toward the human beside her. When the speech ended, Marcus turned to her. "You heading back to your homeworld?" "Yes," she said. "My people will expect a full report. They value precision and logic in such matters," he smiled. "I bet they'll find your report very calm and perfect like you." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "Perfect is an illusion, Lieutenant. Even calmness can be a mask." Marcus tilted his head. You saying you wear a mask? Sareth looked at him for a long moment. I used to, she said quietly. But perhaps I am learning to lower it. There was silence for a heartbeat, and then Marcus smiled again. Not his usual playful smile, but something softer, warmer. That's good. The universe feels a little more honest when people take off their masks. Her expression softened in return. Honesty seems to be your species' specialty. Maybe, he said. Or maybe we're just too stubborn to hide how we feel. She almost laughed. A gentle, graceful sound. Stubbornness and honesty. An odd combination, but somehow effective. They both stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the turvan beasts move lazily in the distance. The creatures looked peaceful now, their movements slow and calm beneath the morning sun. You humans, Sareth said finally, see life in ways that are unfamiliar to us. You act first, question later, and somehow your choices still lead to life, not ruin. Marcus chuckled. We've made our share of mistakes too. But maybe that's how we learn. Through failure? She asked. Through feeling, he corrected gently. Through caring enough to try again. Sareth looked thoughtful. Feeling is strength. That idea once sounded foolish to me, and now? She met his gaze. Now it sounds true. For a moment they just looked at each other, not as alien and human, not as captain and engineer, but as two beings who had shared danger, laughter, and discovery. Later that afternoon, Sareth walked back toward the Velora. The air shimmered with the hum of the ship's engines preparing for takeoff. Her crew saluted as she passed, but she paused near the base of the ramp, glancing back one last time. Marcus was still there, standing near the courtyard, watching her ship. The sunlight caught his hair and the edges of his uniform. He lifted a hand in farewell. Sareth hesitated, then raised her hand in return. A small, simple gesture, but one filled with quiet meaning. As she stepped aboard the ship, her aide Lyran approached. Captain, all systems ready. Shall we depart? Yes, she said. But her gaze lingered on the window that showed the human colony shrinking in the distance. Lyran hesitated before speaking again. You've seemed different since the storm, Captain. Sareth turned her eyes toward him. Different? He nodded carefully. More open, less distant. She considered that for a long moment, then replied, Perhaps humans are contagious. Lyran blinked, uncertain if she was serious. Then, seeing the faint amusement in her eyes, he smiled. The Velora rose gently through the sky, passing above the plains where the beasts grazed and the colony glimmered like a cluster of stars. When the ship broke through the planet's atmosphere, the view of space opened before them, endless and beautiful. Sareth went to her quarters, where her personal log awaited recording. She stood before the glowing screen, thinking about everything she had seen and learned. Her voice, when she began to speak, was calm as always, but her words carried something new. Mission report Hydra 9. Cooperation with human colony successful. Data collected on turvan biology, magnetic patterns, and environmental response. However, the most significant discovery was not scientific but personal. Humans are guided by emotion, yet their emotion does not weaken them. It gives them courage beyond reason. They act with heart, often without thought of consequence, and still they survive. Not because of luck, but because of belief. They believe in hope, in others, in possibilities. I have seen a human face danger without hesitation, not for duty, but for compassion. Such behavior defies Aelvorian logic, yet it commands respect. Perhaps logic alone cannot explain life. Perhaps it is feeling, the very thing we fear, that allows life to grow. She paused for a moment, her eyes drifting to the window where stars shimmered quietly in the dark. One human said, "We can't stand still when someone needs help." Those words will remain with me. They describe more than a habit, they describe a truth. Humanity is restless, curious, reckless at times, but also kind. They remind the universe that courage is not born from perfection. It is born from care. Her voice softened as she added one final note. Recommendation, continued cooperation with humanity. They may teach us more about ourselves than we expect. She ended the recording, then sat quietly for a while. The hum of the ship was steady, like the calm after a storm. Her reflection appeared faintly in the window, calm, composed, and yet changed. Her eyes no longer held only logic. They held warmth. Sareth thought of Marcus one last time, His laughter, his honesty, the way he faced the storm without fear. She remembered how his simple words had stayed with her. It's what humans do. A faint smile touched her lips. Yes, she whispered softly. That is what humans do. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and for the first time in her life, Captain Sarith Valara didn't just see space as a map of data and destinations. She saw it as something alive, full of mystery, beauty, and emotion. The Valora turned gracefully and jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the world where an alien captain and a human engineer had shared something neither of them could fully explain: understanding. And though they were now light years apart, both of them, Sarith and Marcus, carried the same quiet truth in their hearts. Sometimes, the strongest connection in the galaxy begins not with logic or fear, but with simple, honest humanity.